Hello, it is a great pleasure to make this presentation on value-oriented sustainability on the request of my friend Young-Woo Kim, whom I have known for 15 years. Young-Woo Kim knows Paris very well, and I had the pleasure myself to visit his beautiful city of Seoul several times. Young-Woo Kim organized my keynote in the Goyang city for the Goyang Destination Week recently, and I am grateful for his cooperation. I am also delighted to make this presentation as it contains a number of concepts about my new book, which is about value capture selling and which will be published in October. The problem with this video, which will last for about 40 minutes, is that, of course, it is difficult to keep attention for such a long time. Another problem, of course, is that I will not have the pleasure to interact with the audience. But I hope, in any case, that this presentation will contribute to make you a master in value-oriented sustainability. So let's look at what sustainability is. It's a huge challenge. I mean, as you can see at the center of the slide, the big challenge is saving the planet. And what you can see all around is that there are many, many dimensions about that, from ocean acidification to food production, to water pollution, to climate changing, and many more. This challenge is really a fantastic one. And the United Nations, for instance, has set 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are here on the screen, of course, too small to be read, but you can go on the United Nations website and see the description of these 17 goals, which shows that the challenge is immense, totally immense. Now, in addition, we have a multitude of sustainability stakeholders that should intervene to face that tremendous challenge. First, we have governments, and at all levels, international organizations like United Nations, but national governments, regional governments, local governments, cities. We have mobility issues in sustainability at the international level, national, regional, and local as well, from airplanes to automobiles. And of course, we have trade and tourism, which play a big role in creating this sustainability challenge. As you know, transportation that is required for trade and tourism is creating a number of issues. And then we have many other stakeholders. Some of them are here, from universities that have to educate people about the issue, to industry, of course, that have to make a lot of efforts to facilitators, like regulators, scientists, consultants, and activists. Now, of course, the most important stakeholders is the world population, which is supporting the suffering on one side of the consequences of non-sustainability, and on the side that have to make a big effort to solve the sustainability issue. And we can distinguish the first world, the richest countries that have contributed in pollution and many other problems of sustainability and have to take a lead role in solving the issue. We have then the second world, countries that are aspiring to a higher level of living, and for that they are using a lot of energy and other resources that are creating more of a sustainability problem. We have the third world, which is facing poverty and many other problems. And finally, we have threatened territories. Some territories that are going to disappear because of the rising water of the oceans. Territories that are going to disappear because of fires, floods, and other issues. Now, it's a multitude of sustainability stakeholders. Now, it's a huge issue. And because of this huge issue, as you have witnessed, we have a lot of talk about the issue of sustainability. And unfortunately, the actions and the results are very far from what would be needed. Now, there is an organization called Destination Sustainability Movement that is rating cities on sustainability. And as I mentioned, I was addressing a keynote in Goyang recently, and I did some research about Goyang, and I was delighted to see that in terms of these rankings, Goyang City in South Korea is ranked #1 in Asia about sustainability, ahead of two great cities of Australia, Melbourne and Sydney. So congratulations Goyang, and congratulations Korea for being on the leading edge of this sustainability effort. Now on the world level, Goyang is #18, which is fantastic. First #1 in Asia, but #18 in the world. Now this is fantastic because most of the top rankings for cities are for Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, that of course have been facing and resolving this issue ahead of other countries in the world. For instance, the only French city ahead of Goyang is Bordeaux in France. Now that's action. Now another kind of action that can be done is what is called the circular economy. That's more practical. It is to minimize the leakage from raw materials to recycling, looking at all the components of waste that can be resolved so that we use less resources and we create less of a sustainability problem. And you can have more information at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, for instance. Now recently, with the cooperation of a colleague, Professor Caroline Ducarros at University of Leuven in Belgium, we have developed a simulation to train students and managers on the issue of circular marketing. And the simulation which we have developed is called Circular Markstrat. You can see on this graph that here we have teams representing companies that have to redesign a company and the products of this company to reduce the carbon footprint, to use less resources, to create more durability of products, to recycle products, and to increase repairability. These are 5 dimensions of circularity that are really emphasized in that training simulation. And by training people, students and managers, we do hope that we will have a tangible impact on sustainability. Now, that's what I call organic business sustainability. It is not, of course, the broad issue of sustainability, which is fantastic, but it is the part that we in business can face in a practical way with tangible results. And I like to express it in simple words by saying, this is about doing more with less. We've got to do more because the world has to progress. We cannot go back to the Middle Ages, and we cannot ask populations to make great sacrifices. Of course, everybody aspires to have more, but we've got to do that with less. So we have to do more in terms of more value for customers and more value for corporations that need to have profitability to invest in different directions. And also we need to do less in terms of waste on people. It's amazing how much waste we have in companies about people who are asked to do useless things and that put under pressure and very often doing things that are not very critical. And we have got also to reduce waste on resources. This is organic business sustainability. Now, the key unifying objective there is sustainable value growth, the subject of this presentation. I have myself distinguished 2 sides of value growth. One is value creation, and the other one is value capture. That means we need to create value, but then we need to capture part of that value so that we can reinvest it towards further progress, doing more by using less. Now, value creation is as perceived by customers. It's not only for companies to decide what is valuable. It's customers who have to define what is valuable to them. And of course, through education, we do hope that customers will put more emphasis on the value that is in sustainability, like durability of products, repairability, and other things that I mentioned earlier in terms of circular marketing. And the way to measure this value creation seen by customers is what we call WTP, the willingness to pay by the customers. If they really think that the product suits their need, then they will be willing to pay more. This is the acid test of value creation. In terms of value capture, value capture is as obtained by corporations. It is what increases the value to corporations, and this value, as I mentioned earlier, is essential to invest further in progress and also to resolve the sustainability issue. Now, in terms of value creation, I published a book called The Momentum Effect, which is still very relevant today. And by the way, it has been translated in Korean. And more recently, I have written this book, Value Capture Selling, which I will talk more about and will be published in November 2023. Value creation, in a few words, is emotions. The way we are able to create value in a sustainable, easy way without too much waste is by creating positive emotions for our products and services. And I will go further on that. Value capture is about negotiation. It's about companies negotiating with their partners so that they can capture a greater share of that value so that they can reinvest. Now, let's look at the first part, value creation. Now, in the Momentum Effect, I mentioned a study that I've run on the top 1,000 firms on the New York Stock Exchange from 1995 to the year 2004. And in this study, we identified about 20% of the companies that we call pioneers that achieved fantastic sustainable growth. And these companies had a characteristic. They had a higher long-term corporate growth, but they spent less on marketing as a percentage of sales, which was counterintuitive. And the reason why they could spend less on marketing is because they didn't need to push as much, because what they did better fit their customer needs. And it is these companies that I analyzed to develop what I called a framework for creating the momentum effect. And there are three main components of value creation in the momentum effect. At the beginning, we need to discover customers in depth to really understand what makes them tick, what makes them delighted, what they really need, as opposed to push on them things that they really don't need that much. So customer discovery is the first stage. Second stage is to develop a power offer. That means products and services that are powerful, that achieve impact on customers. And when they achieve impact, then we have customer engagement. Now, let's see first what we mean by customer engagement. Customer engagement is emotions that last over time. And you have been subjected to that, or at least you have witnessed it. When customers are delighted about a product, what do? They buy more of the product. They repeat buying over time. They talk to others about it. Definitely, companies that can create customer engagement don't need to push as much. It is the customers that are engaged, that are actually helping the company spread the good news about their products and help the distribution of these products or services. Now, how do we create this engagement? Well, I mentioned it through a power offer. But now, what is a power offer? A power offer is a core product, whatever it is, an automobile, a radio set, a TV set, a telephone, whatever. That's a core product. And then what creates a power is the plus added to this product, and these are the emotions built inside. When you see people that really love their products, and you can see it in the street, people that use their mobile phone, you can see so that are just using a product, and so that really love their mobile phone, or their cars, or whatever, you can see emotions that really create power in a product. And emotions that are listed here are things like trust, prestige, belonging, assurance, confidence, status, sustainability, simplicity. It's an unlimited source of emotions that you can build into a product. Now, as I mentioned, I made a presentation for Goyang recently, so I talked about the power for cities. Now, what is a city? The core product of a city is just a location and space available, and then a few other things. That's, a city is made of buildings and all of that. Now, what makes a city a power offer is when it's able to create emotions. And these emotions are things like trust, labor quality, quality of life, entertainment, safety, glamour, pride, better future, whatever. I mean, again, it's unlimited, the number of emotions that we can create in a city if we really look at the task of creating these emotions for the sustainable growth of the city. And the way we can discover all these emotions that make a product or service a power offer, then we've got to study customers in depth. Now, what I did in Goyang, and I'd like to share it with you, is to illustrate this concept with two very different cities. One is Singapore, which is a fantastic, well-known city all around the world, which is in the top of a lot of ratings. At the other extreme is a very small city called Val d'Isère, which is a skiing station in France. You all know about Singapore, I'm sure, but only a few of you probably know about Val d'Isère. So let's look at these two cities and how they achieve growth in a sustainable way. Now, Singapore, this is a picture of Singapore River. In 1965, you can see the old buildings and the peaceful river and a few embarkations there. Now, this is the same location in 2010, 45 years later. And you can see the river is still there, but you can see all these buildings there. And of course, these buildings have not been built there for useless reasons. All these buildings create value. And in a sustainable way, the proof is, Singapore, it keeps growing and growing and being successful. This is a view of Sentosa Island in 1974. And this is a view of the same island in 2016. And you can see, the developments there. This is a view of what is known now as the financial district. You can see the OCBC Bank in 1978 and a few high-rise already in 1978. But now let's look at it in 2017. You can still recognize the OCBC building on the right-hand side, but you can see many, many more buildings in the financial district. Now, this financial district, now we can see from far in 1998, and now we see it in 2020, 22 years later. The financial district is still there in the background, but in front of it is Marina Bay, which has been built from nothing by gaining land on the sea. And of course, Marina Bay today is the landmark of Singapore. Now, of course, you say, well, that has taken a lot of resources. Yes, you're right. Of course, it has created a lot of resources, especially lots of financial resources. But I remind you that Singapore started by becoming independent from Malaysia with no resources whatsoever, only marshes. So Singapore has been able to build all of that in an efficient, sustainable way. They created value starting from nothing. And they did that because of very strong emotions. So what do you think were the key driving emotions in enabling Singapore to become the fantastic city that it is today? Now, I'd like to share with you a personal experience about Singapore. I have been on the board of INSEAD for 18 years. And at one time in the 1990s, we wanted to expand the INSEAD into Asia because Asia was booming. And we looked at a number of locations where we could create an INSEAD campus. And a number of cities were willing to help us do that. There was Hong Kong, which was a fantastic financial center, Kuala Lumpur, which was investing a lot in developing the visibility of the city, and Singapore. So we visited the three cities. I remember when we visited Singapore, we arrived to Singapore airport. The officials from the government took us in a bus. They took us to this location on the side of Singapore. And there was an army site with old barracks falling down, with barbed wire fences. All that was falling down. We used a small road to get there. And the officials told us that's where your INSEAD campus could be. Now, don't be afraid about what you see, because in the space of 5 years, we are going to build a huge road there with many lanes. We will build an underground station there. We will have a research center with a lot of pharmaceutical laboratories, with universities coming. So the INSEAD campus will be surrounded by intellect. And we will have an underground station just at the foot of your INSEAD campus. Well, I remember we looked at each other and we said, is this possible? We were taken to a building where there was a model of the future development of the whole area. We looked at each other, and eventually INSEAD made the decision to choose Singapore. And everything the Singapore government said became true. 5 years later, there was this huge freeway going through this part of Singapore. There was a fantastic underground with a station at the foot of the INSEAD campus. There were buildings all around with students, with scientists. It was a fantastic experience. So, what were the key driving emotions that made Singapore change so much with this example of the INSEAD campus? Well, in my view, the two key emotions were pride, the pride of the Singapore people in building something fantastic out of nowhere. Of course, there's always a big resistance to change anywhere in countries, in cities, in companies. This resistance to change is called nostalgia. People would like to keep the past the way it was. And most people don't like to change unless they explain why that change will help them have a better life. And that's what the government in Singapore has been able to do, is make sure that the Singapore population would be proud of these developments of the city. And the other one that I explained with the INSEAD story is trust. When the Singapore government said something, then the words were followed by action, and things happen. As you know, one of the biggest problems of government, and sometimes even of top management in companies, is that there are a lot of words, a lot of promises, but unfortunately, action does not always follow the words. Now, let's look at another example, much smaller. Val d'Isère was a very small station in France. It's still very small, about 1,500 inhabitants. This is a picture of Val d'Isère in 1991. It was already somewhat known because of a champion called Jean-Claude Key, who was world champion in various skiing events. Now, a new management of the city came and said, well, we would like to grow the city because there are a lot of skiing stations, especially in Switzerland and Austria, becoming big. Why not us in Val d'Isère? And of course, when they submitted that to the population, and in a small village, everybody knows each other, there was a lot of resistance. Now, it happens that in a city like that, the land was owned by farmers who in the summer were taking care of the farms, and in the winter were doing some work with the skiing station. And people in trade that had shops and so on that in the summer sold to the local population, which was very small, and in the winter were making more money with the tourists coming. But all that on a small scale. So the new management of Val d'Isère was able to discuss a lot with the population to make them aware that they could have a much better life. They could have a much better life by attracting more tourists, by building more things around, and that actually the future would be better. Now that took a lot of convincing because skiing slopes had to be redesigned because they were quite difficult. They had to be broadened. The roads had to change. Some buildings had to be destroyed. All of that, of course, happened in a certain period of time. But with the support, of course, of the population, despite the resistance at the beginning due to always nostalgia. It was always better in the old days. And that to change that, to build a better future, it takes a lot of discussions, a lot of convincing. And that is the same view of Val d'Isère in 2020. 30 years later, totally changed. And here, another picture, which is one of the best skiing station hotels in the world. It's called AILS. It was built in 2019, and it's absolutely fantastic inside. Here are just a few pictures of the Gala Spa, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, in the end, Val d'Isère today is the most expensive ski resort in Europe. If you look at cost for hotel room or the cost of buying an apartment, the cost per square meter, it's the most expensive ski resort in Europe, according to specialists, which is the Savills company in real estate. Now, again, what were the key driving emotions? As I mentioned, people need to be convinced, and emotions change the world, not just rationality. And I studied that, and actually Val d'Isère is the subject of chapter 11 of my book on the momentum effect. So we analyzed, how could that happen, which was absolutely fantastic, in a small village of 1,500 inhabitants. And the key emotions were the future of our children. People who accepted this change, forgetting some of the past, nostalgia, because they could see that the future of the children would be very different. Instead of staying farmers in the summer and ski monitors in the winter, the children could actually make it to universities in France or in Europe and aspire to totally new jobs, become medical doctors, business executives, scientists, and so on. This is the emotion that in the end, this vision of a better future for their children that convinced the population of Val d'Isère about that change. Now, what you can see in these two examples of Singapore and Val d'Isère already, that it's a lot about value creation based on positive emotions to make it efficient, as opposed to push just with resources. But also you can see value capture, because both Singapore and Val d'Isère became very rich themselves. Not only they created value for customers, for tourists, for businesses, and so on, but they captured value for the city. As you know, many cities around the world, they want to become bigger, and they become bigger, how? By creating a huge deficit, which is the case, of course, of my beloved city of Paris, which today runs a deficit of 8 billion euros, which is huge, because, of course, they use force and money to try to change the city, as opposed to try to build positive emotions on the population like Singapore or Val d'Isère did. So now let's look at this second part, value capture. And the heart of value capture is having proper negotiations with your partners. Now, in business, the history of business is that success was revenue growth. Success was becoming bigger with bigger sales, and that has changed. In the last 20 years, most businesses have seen that size in sales was not the right way to develop sustainable growth. The right way was corporate value growth. Let's take an example of that. The GE example, General Electric. Now, General Electric in the 80s and 90s was led by Jack Welch, a fantastic chairman. He was a hero for 20 years. And GE revenue under his leadership grew from $28 billion to $170 billion in 20 years. Unfortunately, this race to grow in revenues for 20 years had side effects that were visible only in the future. This strategy was not sustainable, and the price to pay came later. The two successors, Jeff Immelt and John Flannery, saw, despite all their efforts, the value of GE go down for 20 years. In the 17 years here, you can see from 2001 to 2018, the value of General Electric went down by 75%. That means that after 20 years, General Electric is worth only 1/4 of what it used to be. That is the price paid because of having pushed in not a reasonable way for revenue growth. Now, there's a new CEO in GE since 2018, and Larry Culp made great efforts to clean up GE and to center on corporate value creation as a priority. And he has got rid of a number of companies that were not that profitable. And you can see that GE people must have been very nostalgic when he got rid of GE Lighting, the bulbs, the electric bulbs that were the heart of General Electric. So, he got rid of this old business that was the heart of General Electric. And about 1 year ago, in July 2022, GE announced the separation of the company into 3 very strong businesses: GE Healthcare, GE Vernova, about energy, and GE Airspace. Now, these 3 businesses would concentrate on the mission of creating corporate value. Now, in the last 12 months, the value of General Electric has been multiplied by 2 or 3, which shows the power of having a strategy based on sustainable corporate value as opposed to a strategy based on revenues. So that's what has happened in the world of business. In the 80s and 90s, and still today in some companies, there's an obsession for bigness. Bigger is better. That has led many companies to see a destruction of corporate value. Some have been bought over, some have gone bankrupt as a result. And now we have a refocus on corporate value, which is less waste, doing more for less. Actually, if we look at this transition, we could say that business has gone from a vision of bigger is better to a vision of richer is better. And you need to be rich to be able to invest, and you need to be rich in order to solve many of the problems that sustainability is creating. So this means a transformation of sales. That means transformation of people who are in the sales force. I call that the 3rd sales transformation. Why? Because the first one was when sales about 30 years ago, 20 to 30 years ago, learn how to respect the clients and how to understand better the needs of the clients as opposed to push on the clients products and services that they did not always need. So the sales force has improved their performance by being better aligned with client needs. The second transformation for me is when the sales force started to work more hand in hand with marketing, being more aligned with marketing. So you see on the slide, clients on the right, marketing on the left, and sales in the middle. These were the first and the second transformation. The current 3rd transformation is to have sales aligned with strategy. That means sales is asked today in many of the leading corporations to concentrate on the creation of corporate value, not just increasing revenues, but corporate value. Now, this means that salespeople, sales professionals, have more responsibilities than they used to when that happens. They have a corporate value objective. This is more difficult, of course, than having a revenue objective. Everybody knows what a revenue is, right? But corporate value is a little more difficult. Then they need a broader perspective. Corporate value, sustainable corporate value, is not only just now in the short term, it's short, medium, and long term. And finally, they need to access to more business information. They just don't sell, but they need to understand, for instance, the profitability of the product and services to be able to guide their sales towards more corporate value. Now, this requires stronger and new competencies, and this requires a training of the sales forces. Now, let's look why. Let's look at the big picture of value capture selling. Usually, there are 3 kinds of negotiation variables in sales. Price, of course, is crucial. Volume, and of course, the price will evolve with the volume. And then what they call allowance, which is everything else. This is money given to the client in B2B to do training, to do training of their people. It's got to deal with credit terms, guarantees, accessories, and things like that. So negotiation is about the three key variables, in my view: price, volume, and allowances. Of course, it's on many, many more dimensions, but I've regrouped many of them in one, which is allowance. Then we have the corporate value drivers, and there are three key corporate value drivers. When I talked about sustainable corporate value, it's made of three things. One is profitability. This is the most visible driver of corporate value, but it is very short term. If you concentrate too much on profitability in the short term, then you could kill the future of your company. So the second dimension of corporate value is market share. You need to have a strong market share in your clients, in your markets, in order to have power in the medium term and still be there and relevant and be able to invest. And the third dimension, which is the stronger for the long term, is customer satisfaction. And that's where we relate corporate value to the creation of value that I mentioned earlier. It's satisfied customers that will keep the company going in the longer term. And you can see that the modern companies that are internet-based, like Amazon, like Airbnb, like Uber, and so on, are really centered on these three variables, but usually in the order for priority. First, customer satisfaction. Second, market share that comes from that. And third, profitability. But they really go after all these three dimensions of corporate value. And existing companies have to follow their model. They have to really make sure they create sustainable corporate value around these three drivers. Now, that means that salespeople need to have clear commercial guidelines. Not only being told you have to sell and you will be paid a commission, a higher commission for the higher sales. No, they need to be given more information about cost, but they need to be given more guidelines about discounts and other dimensions of the allowance and all of that. Basically, the modern salesperson has to be more of a small business person having responsibility for the short, medium, and long term. Now, I studied this issue with a number of companies, and I came to the conclusion that this required 9 key competencies that are described in my book. The first 3 competencies are essential. They need to be mastered. It's client alignment, marketing alignment, and corporate value drivers. The first 2 are the result of the first 2 transformations that have not been yet achieved in every company. And the third one is about the corporate value drivers that I just mentioned. So these 3 things have got to be mastered by any sales professional today. Then there are 3 other competencies that are complex, and salespeople have got to comprehend their complexity. They don't need to master them, but they need to comprehend the complexity. One is multiple objective. Of course, it was easier when salespeople had only one objective: sales, revenues, and the commission was based on these revenues. Now, with multiple objectives, which are these 3 corporate value drivers, it's more difficult, and salespeople need to be trained to master that. Then they need to adopt a leadership attitude. You know, salespeople traditionally have been relatively independent, looking at the short term. Now they've got to look at the short, medium, and long term, and that takes a leadership attitude. It's not that they need to be great leaders, managing a lot of people, but they need to lead themselves in the future, creating value, so they need to have this leadership attitude. And third, they need to understand customer satisfaction in depth. Not only the rational aspect of customer satisfaction, but the emotional aspects that we talked about. Because very often, a customer can be happy about the rational aspects, but what they need in addition, they need to have the respect, they need to have the attention, they need to be listened to. That's what creates a lot of this emotional customer satisfaction, which then encourages the customer to come back to the company. So these are 3 competencies, which are a little complex and need to be better comprehended than what they are today. Then 3 more competencies need to be achieved. We need results. So one is, of course, achieving effective value negotiations. That means negotiations where at the end it's not only revenues, it's not only sales, but it's corporate value that has been delivered. And for that, one need to close for corporate value. You know that most salespeople have one achievement in mind, which is to close a sale. Closure is very important. But here, the closure has got to be for corporate value. Let's look at a short graph to illustrate the point. On the vertical axis, you have corporate value. Above zero, you create value. Below zero, you destroy value. And on the horizontal axis is the negotiation posture that the salesperson can take. You see that an easy sales attitude, which is, well, achieving a deal, and some salespeople say a deal is better than no deal, a bad deal is better than no deal. That cannot happen anymore. Salespeople cannot be allowed to have an easy negotiation posture that would lead to a destruction of corporate value. Then the next negotiation posture is a safe posture. That means you really ask a lot of questions to the customers to make sure that you understand the customer well, so that the customer will accept a deal that is also contributing value to the company. Now, the next stage, beyond safe, is risky. What does that mean? That means that in any negotiation with a customer, there is some amount of bluff. That means customers don't always tell the truth. They always claim they don't have enough money, that they need more, and so on and so on. And salespeople have to be listening carefully to the discussion with the client to know how far they can go to take some risk and provide a deal to the customer that would capture more value than the customer would like to give them. And as you know, many customers have become very professional buyers, and they've been trained in many of these techniques to capture more value on their side. So the salespeople also have got to be trained to take a little more risk and to capture more value. And the potential is there, right? The arrow that you see there is the potential that salespeople can achieve by capturing more corporate value. However, you can see on the right-hand side the cliff. If a salesperson takes too much risk, then the problem is having no deal. Now, having no deal is better than having a deal that destroys value. But of course, the best is to have a deal with positive corporate value. And that's why in my book on value capture selling, I spend some time discussing the probability approach. How can we look at the client as somebody with whom we are playing some kind of game, and which is playing some probabilities, and it's in the interest of both the client and the salesperson to get a good deal that is good for each, where each can capture part of the value that has been created. Now, the last competence, and the one that frankly is the most sustainable over time, is developing an eagerness to win and to learn. In my view, business and sales is very much like sports. You can improve and stay competent for a long time only if you have this eagerness to win and to learn. And very often we talk about somebody as having been lucky. And that's many of my students, when we look at some famous people who have had a lot of business success, they say he or she has been lucky. Well, it's up to you to make yourself lucky. If you have this eagerness to win and learn, and if you follow some of the points that I made earlier, you should make yourself lucky, because the best definition of sustainability is that you remain lucky for a long time. What I like is this quote from a great French novelist called Jean Cocteau. And he said, "We must believe in luck, for how else can we explain the success of those we don't like. And of course, I hope that you will be so lucky, and so that your competitors say that they don't understand why you achieve what you've been achieving is because probably you've been lucky. But you know that basically you are competent and you've got this eagerness to win and learn all the time. So in summary of what I have talked about here is the 9 competencies, 3 to master, 3 that are complex to comprehend, and 3 that where you have to achieve tangible results, not just talk, but tangible results. And in conclusion of this presentation is a slide that I showed at the beginning to tell you what we were going to go through. Value creation first, and you can find more details in my book on momentum effect, and value capture second, to make sure that you keep a great part of this value creation, and you'll find more detail in value capture selling that will come in November 2023. This is what I call organic, sustainable value growth. That means we can solve part, a small part, but still a part of the sustainability problem by making the simple thing of achieving more with less, by creating more value and wasting less resources. Now, there are 3 ways in which you could make me happy following this presentation, and it's all to do with my coming book, Value Capture Selling. The first one, of course, is to order my book, Value Capture Selling, on Amazon.com, where it will be available at the end of October. Then second is to write a short review on Amazon.com. You'll notice when you get the book that if you have a short review for me on Amazon.com, you will gain free practice on the RevManX simulator that practices the concepts that we have in value capture selling. And finally, please keep in touch and share your value selling experience with your friends and colleagues. So I can only thank you for having had the patience to listen to me and for helping me in the future. And my best wish is that you are lucky in creating sustainable value for yourself in the future. Thank you.